So without further ado, I'm going to introduce tonight's speaker, who's Sally Chapman. And Sally is a photographic artist with an extensive history in both photography and ceramics. And knowing that, it may come as no surprise that she's drawn by the tactility of historic processes as well as handmade artist books. And Sally was chosen by our guest juror, Paula Toniarelli, who's the former executive director of the Griffin Museum, as the grand prize winner of Halide's annual call for entry exhibition, which is called Living Image. And so for those of you who may not be familiar with Halide or Living Image, every year we invite a guest juror to jury the show, and then he or she chooses a grand prize winner. And that person's work becomes the foundation of the following year's spring invitational show, which I curate. And so, like I mentioned, Sally's work is sharing the walls with that of Sandy Davis and Trisha Rosenkild. And if you are not in Philly, and if you live in Sally's home state of Massachusetts, which I see many of you do, she also has a show coming up at the Concord Library. So if you can't catch her work in Philly, you have another opportunity to catch it next month. I think it's going up in May.
Just in a week and a half.
Ooh, exciting.
May 3rd, next week it opens.
Excellent. All right, and so I'm going to turn it right over to Sally.
Okay, great. Well, hello, and thank you. I want to thank Halide Project, and especially Dale, and also Frank Barbella, for putting on this wonderful exhibit, Reconstructing the Past. And it's wonderful to be exhibiting with Sandra and Trish, and I love the conversation that emerges between the works. Also, thank you to Paula Toniarelli for selecting my work as the grand prize winner. That's always so nice. And then putting this talk together has been an experience for myself in reconstructing my own past as an artist. I found it interesting to see how everything evolved on the screen.
There should be, oh, if you go all the way to the left, the play from start.
Oh, there it is.
Might
Okay,
be there.
great.
Yeah.
Got
See
that.
if that works. Yep, there you go.
So this has been, reconstructing my own past as an artist, and I found it interesting to see how everything evolved despite the meandering route that I took. I graduated from Michigan State in the mid-70s with a BFA in ceramics and photography. I then moved to Colorado, perhaps answering the call of John Denver's Rocky Mountain High at the time. I landed in Boulder, which had an active ceramic scene, the most well-known in town being Betty Woodman. The photographers here might know her as the mother of Francesca Woodman. Betty was a mentor to our group, the Potter's Guild. I explored all different types of ceramic processes and the ways of making things, from everything from tableware to sinks, light fixtures, and sculptural pieces. My ceramic career lasted around 25 years. I wanted to have last series that I worked on.
Hey, Sally.
Yeah?
Sorry, I'm going to jump in real quick. You're breaking up a little bit like before, so if you turn your video off, it may help with that a little bit.
Oh, just a minute. I think I have to stop share to get to that.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Sorry, everybody.
That's okay. Okay, so this is the last the last series of sculptures that I worked on. This uses recontextualizing of imagery, in this case, road signs. This series I called On the Road, and this is as I now live in Lowell, the birthplace of Jack Kerouac, the author of the book On the Road. And I believe I probably called it this as a nod to him. The series revolved around street signage with metal surfaces, such as train car sides and metal fences. The signage is a color and geometry that stands out in the expansive Western landscape. This is one of the murals from the series, and this is one of the smaller ones and measures 37 inches wide by 27 inches high. The murals were only restricted in size by what I could fit in the back of my small pickup truck. Pickup was part of living in Colorado at that time. I was doing photography at this time, but mainly for family photos, to photograph my ceramic work, and as a sketch pad as well. I was often stopping to take pictures of signage or groupings of traffic cones for studies for my sculptural pieces. When I gave my 7-year-old, who is now 40, his first camera, I was surprised to see him take pictures of signs. Now, these are 2 vessels that I did in that style, and they are around 18 inches high. And as a ceramic artist, the vessel is the main form that things move from, and it's a matter of contemplation. One thinks about the interiority as well as, how it affects the exterior.
Sally, sorry, we just got a text, or I'm sorry, a message in the chat from someone saying that you're cutting in and out. I don't think it's your connection, but I'm wondering if when you advance your slides, if you're traveling over your mic somehow.
No,
if it's like embedded in your keyboard.
I wonder if maybe my paper is covering the mic. I don't know where the mic. Aha.
That might be it.
Okay. We'll try again.
Okay, I know I do that sometimes. Yes, okay, someone else says it's getting garbled. So yeah, I'm not sure where your mic is, but if you make sure your keyboard's clear and.
Okay.
All right, take 2.
Take 2. So, so am I sounding less garbled now, or we don't know? We'll go on. Okay.
Yeah, you sound good now. It was just every once in a while. So hopefully it's just that.
Maybe it was the paper on the keyboard. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so this is the triangle series that I did. And for this, I made a slump mold, which is a form that can be used to make multiples. With that, I could play with the language of the signage in various arrangements. These are around 16 inches high, 3 to 4 inches deep, depending on the forms that are attached. At the time, I was very competitive about my work and was caught up in the idea of making it. As a result, my experience in the art world was very ego-centered. If I was in a show, it was about me. And if I was rejected, I was incredulous that inferior pieces were on display. And at the same time, for the artists around me. In the end, I realized that I wasn't enjoying making artwork, and I questioned my involvement in the art scene. I had a sense that there was a higher inspiration and motivation possible. I stopped making art and found that I had much more fun attending shows when I wasn't competing. I could enjoy the art of my friends and what was on exhibit in museums without trying to get something for myself. This also coincided with meeting a spiritual teacher. Within the spiritual practice, I began to realize the alignment of the creative impulse as being the same as the spiritual impulse. One is reaching for something higher, but what it is has to be discovered. It is a constant journey into the unknown. Now, fast forward 15 years, and I have moved from Colorado to California and then to Massachusetts. And I'm working as an administrative assistant at MIT. I was beginning to feel the pull once again to make art. I had long since sold my ceramic equipment and wasn't inclined to go back to it, but I was inspired by photography. I was initially inspired by what I saw on the way home walking in the dark. I wanted to learn how to capture that. I enrolled in a night photography class at the New England School of Photography, and I was able to borrow a digital camera from one of the labs that I worked with at MIT. That set me off on the photographic path. More classes to learn the digital camera, since all my earlier training had been analog with film cameras. And this is a photo of a student-occupied house next door to me. The scene that initially inspired me was on a cold night after an ice storm, where the lights were reflecting on the icy snow in a small local park. It just seemed magical. But once I had the skills to capture that, I couldn't bring myself to go out in those conditions to photograph. But this is an image that I did make in that same little park on a rainy night, but not so cold. I joined the Boston Camera Club and learned a lot about composition. And the atelier class at the Griffin Museum was instrumental in learning to create a series and thinking more critically about subject matter. There was a lot of support and camaraderie in those settings, and I owe a lot to them. Eventually, exhibiting work came up. I had trepidations from my previous experience of falling into an ego realm. But I realized that I know that trap and I know not to fall into it. Mainly, I am continually humbled to see how much great work is being created and feel continually pushed to a higher standard and blessed to be in the company of wonderful artists. It's not about I, but we. And this is the first photographic series that came out of the atelier class at the Griffin. It's called Yards of Faith. I was inspired and curious about the virgins and saints that dotted the front yards of the houses in the neighborhood where I lived. Having been raised Protestant, I didn't really understand the impulse to put a Virgin Mary in one's yard. But as I worked on the series, I became moved by the expression of faith that inspired people to set these up. So the one on the left is a classic bathtub virgin. We're using a bathtub to simulate a grotto. And the one on the right, I call Virgin and the Rabbit. The one on the left is Lady of Bristol. That's my name for her. I gave her this name as she was in a neighbor's yard on the street that we lived on Bristol Road. Many of the people who've placed these statues in the yards in the neighborhoods were immigrants from Portugal and Italy. And with the few that I met, there wasn't enough common language to really discuss the motivation of placing the statues, even though they'd been in the country for 40 or 50 years. And yeah, the one on the right, I call Virgin Warmth. The one on the left is using the Infant of Prague, and the one on the right I call Corner Altar. The younger generations that I talked to didn't seem to know much about them, didn't necessarily know who the saint was that they lived with. With both of these, other figures have been accumulated around the bottoms of them, around the base over time. I don't know the stories of these per se, but often angels would be added in remembrance of a loved one. I learned a lot about the saints and how to recognize them as I worked with them. The Infant of Prague is a very famous statue and is said to have once belonged to Teresa de Avila and was brought to Prague by a Carmelite novitiate around 1630. Many miracles are attributed to the statue. As the neighborhood is gentrified, the statues are being removed. The St. Anthony statue on the right was on the street where I lived and has since disappeared. But I have met other people who may find a statue hidden away in their new home and set it out again. Another story I heard was that a house that had a virgin in the yard that the new owner wasn't interested in. Somehow she found people that wanted it, and they had a procession as they moved it to its new home. Now, at the end of the Yards of Faith, I was still interested in people's expression of faith and the objects that people live with to inspire them. And many of my friends have shrines in designated areas in their homes for meditation. So I started photographing those. Some people didn't initially think of their display as being a shrine or altar, such as the one on the right. But this is a display of items that are precious reminders to them, and images they hold precious. These also become a portrait of the individual in a way. The one on the left looks rather messy, but this person was not a visual person per se, but very devoted. When he was in hospice, I brought him a print of this so that he could have a shrine in his room. He was delighted to have it for those last few days. This is a friend who is a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, but also cognizant of her Jewish roots. You can see by the menorah on the shelf. I reached out to the Wiccan community and went to some of their meetings to begin to understand their practices. I let some of the people know that I was interested in making this series, and some let me photograph their altars. This is a very extensive one. And I always felt honored to be allowed to photograph these shrines, as they are very personal. And, they're within the home, in a very private setting. And this one is Hindu leanings here. And this person is a longtime practitioner and has worked with many teachers and practices over many years, probably 40 or 50 years, and she honors all of them. Now we come to the return to analog. While I was working at MIT, I saw that there were some alternative process classes offered through the Student Art Association. There, I was able to explore gum bichromate, Van Dyke, salt, cyanotype, and a few others. Cyanotype stuck, and I started to explore it on my own. As many people who work with these mediums find, the draw is to work with a hands-on medium. It is a great break from the digital world. There is always the magic of seeing an image emerge in a developing bath. And most of these alt processes, the developing bath is water. For those tuning in that don't know cyanotype, it is one of the first photographic techniques developed in the 19th century to be able to fix an image. Most people are familiar with it and its architectural use to make blueprints. And this was a time of exploring a new medium and finding different imagery and techniques. This one was in Bristol, New Hampshire. And I was, well, pulling images from my files to experiment with. This is Gayhead Cliff at Martha's Vineyard. And this was shot with a camera that was converted to infrared and toned with tannic acid. It was actually the camera that was loaned to me to take the digital classes. And then the lab closed and I was given the camera. So things work out. And I also played around with photographing the roller derby. And this is also toned with tannic acid. I also started to toy with to work with the toy film camera, the Holga. And this is it's a cheap camera with a plastic lens and uses film and was intended for children, but now many people are using it. And this is a fencing triptych. And this one reflects back to my On the Road series with the love of stark colors and the geometry of the plastic fencing. I feel sort of coming full circle with it. This one I call the bike rack. It was included in the 2018 Somerville Toy Camera Festival. These were scanned and then printed digitally. And this one was in the 2019 Somerville Toy Camera Festival. For the toy camera users listening, the 2023 festival will be opening soon for submissions. And it's a really fun time, and it spans 3 galleries across Somerville. This is in the fall of 2019. I returned to the darkroom at the New England School of Photography and started to print black and white images. It was great to be in the darkroom again. This was shot at an asphalt plant nearby here, and this little toy car was sitting in a pile of odd pieces of machinery. I was fascinated by it. Then in March of 2020, I was just finishing up a darkroom session when we were told that the school was shutting down because of the pandemic. They had months before announced that 2020 would be the last year for the school, but that ended my use of a darkroom for that time. So here we are in lockdown, and I continued to work with cyanotype. Initially, my pieces were small, like 7.5 by 9.5 inches. Then a friend gave me a large pile of like 30 by 40 inch BFK Reeves paper. They were the cast-offs from an artist printing in intaglio. They had been lightly printed on one side. I started using the paper on the unused side. It was great to have free material. It can be so liberating when you're in the process of experimentation. You aren't precious about your experiments and willing to try anything. I started using the paper with the cutout, digital negatives, and oil pastels. This coincided with my move from Boston area to Lowell, Mass. In the new space, I have a dedicated studio area, which it makes much easier to work in larger pieces. The one on the left is called Nips. It's 39 inches high and 15 wide. The other one, Lost Shoes, is 22 inches wide by 12 inches high. These pieces are about the throwaways on our streets and predate my involvement in the Lowell Litter Crew. This is a group that I'm part of that goes out every weekend and cleans up trash that has been left in the streets. I expect this theme to come back again in my work. The nips and debris evolved into the next series called Living in the Bubble. This is about being isolated and surrounded by my stuff. This also incorporated drawing with pastels and washing over areas of the piece with water and vinegar before it was exposed to sunlight. This gives it a dreamlike floating quality. This one was awarded the Director's Award at the A. Smith Gallery in the Common Object Show in 2021. This one, at the time, I wasn't aware of it, but in putting it in this series now, I was, here I was just doing a more organized geometric arrangement of the objects, but looking at it, it seems to reference a hospital monitor or something. Yeah. And this one again is the floating feeling through time and memories. This has just a lot of my house items around the house, like the other ones. This is a picture of my grandparents long before I knew them. This is a Kachina doll that my father would collect on his trips out west. And this is a commemorative plate of the moon landing. So at the same time, I started a series called Renewal. With spring emerging and the flowering branches, it was a very hopeful moment and reassuring as we navigated the unknown realm of the pandemic. This series is when I started the more scroll-like format. I'm using a 13 by 19-inch digital negative, which is, that's what this area here is, these. And that's what is captured by the camera. Then I have extended the image by drawing beyond the space. And this is drawing with the oil pastels. And I also discovered that I could use a dry pastel underneath the cyanotype, and it didn't wash off in the developing process. The one on the left I call Old Cherry, and the one on the right is Lilacs. These were from around my home in the neighborhood. And I started to pull in more architectural pieces here. And so photographing the local architecture here. There are many grand old buildings from the 19th century in various states of maintenance. The one on the left is called Old Lady's Home, and I don't know if you can read it, probably not, but right in here in the brick, that's what's embedded. It says Old Lady's Home. And this there's another brick dating the building at 1881. The town record shows it was originally built for the purpose of supporting aged and female women and to afford a home and care for elderly women. It could accommodate approximately 35 women who turned over all their possessions in exchange for support and care. The one on the right, I call Past Glory, and it speaks to me of another era of wealthy industrialists. But now it's cut up into apartments, but it has beautiful design to it. And this is Victory. This is one of the first ones I did using statuary. She stands in the square in front of City Hall as you come into town. And I continue to use her in a number of other pieces. And this begins the Mythic Nature series, which is what is on display at the Halide Project. And I'll also have a number of these at the Concord Library coming up next week. And looking for new material and to follow up on the flowering branches, I began to photograph in botanic gardens. Seeing some of the statuary there, I began to use it. Pan was the first one that I experimented with to combine with the gardens and the statues. This is Pan. It didn't come together at first, and I had to put it aside for a while. I knew that there was an idea that I wanted to pursue, but I had to find the visual language and techniques to express it. It wasn't until I did some others that the solution to this one emerged. And I always like to pair the two of these, Bacchus and Pan. And like the Pan is at the Tower Hill Garden outside of Framingham, and Bacchus is on the Crane Estate in Ipswich, Mass. This is The Angel and the Saint. This series varies from the Yards of Faith or the shrines in that they were all in private yards and homes. These are all in the public sphere. The Saint is on the Crane Estate, which is one of the so-called cottages that the wealthy built around the 20th century. The statuary was replicating European grandeur along the Grand Allée. This is in the gardens behind the mansion that leads down to the shore. The apple trees are from a local orchard. Other statues I might notice as I drive around. The angel is in a courtyard or church courtyard in a nearby town. I noticed her as she appeared to have a clenched fist. This was at the same time as the Black Lives Matter protests. I'm also inclined to think that she probably initially had a finger pointing up, as they often do, but it might have broken off. These that I did in the early part of the series were ensconced in foliage, but as the series progressed, the statuary began to tell a story of their own as they were recontextualized into new settings. The one on the left is called Liberation Rising, and on the right is Land Acknowledgement, Second Passakanaway. The Liberation Rising uses part of the monument to the Boston Massacre before the revolution occurred in the Boston Common. The Second Passakanaway is a local monument currently set in a Lowell cemetery. He was a powerful native leader when the Europeans arrived in the 17th century. He was the Sachem of the Pennacook tribe and eventually became Bashaba, or Chief of Chiefs, of the multi-tribal confederation in the broader area of New Hampshire and Vermont. The statue was created in the early 20th century and portrays him as a Plains Indian. His own dress would have been quite different. This is Balboa Pilgrim and Cosmos Sailor. The Pilgrim sculpture was originally commissioned for the town of Springfield, Mass. By the railroad tycoon Chester Chapin to depict his ancestor, an early settler in Springfield, Mass. The statue was created by Augustus St. Gaudens and was so popular that he was commissioned to make them for other cities, including Philadelphia. When I was in Philadelphia a week ago, I did seek out that sculpture monument, and it's behind the Philadelphia Museum, if you're there, and across from the boathouses. I found the statue striking and decided I could also place it in Balboa Park, since he seemed to travel around a lot. And I thought it was an interesting twist. Also, when he made the one for Philadelphia, he changed the face on it. The sailor is from a Civil War monument in Worcester, Mass. I liked the image and realized I had never thought about the Navy of the North. I love cosmos flowers and like putting the sailor in the field also an unlikely setting. This is Moon Serenade and Stirrings. I found the sculpture for Moon Serenade, or when I was doing an online search for monuments in the area. I found this monument of President McKinley in Springfield, Mass. I was very struck by the drama of the piece, which features a bust of President McKinley on top, at the top of a plinth, with this fawning woman draping palm fronds up to him. So I decided to use the figure of the woman in a setting that I find less cringeworthy. It makes her more heroic. The other piece, called Stirrings, uses a statue here in Lowell, which is a tribute to the workers that built the canals for the textile mills in the 19th century. I love putting him in a pond with a number of topiary creatures to make for an eerie scene. So I don't know if you could see, there's a man here, and there's a little giraffe back there. At this point, I consider the Mythic Nature series finished. I made the last ones last summer. It's interesting to decide that you're done with the series. I thought it would be when the ideas seemed to have played out. But for me, it's because other ideas started calling out more and more loudly to be explored. And I'm once again drawn to work in 3 dimensions. I'm not interested in working in clay at this point, but just taking further steps with the photographic mediums. Everything builds on what has come before, and with the cyanotype imagery, and I'm intrigued with what happens with the process of folding. One of the wonderful aspects of working with paper is that it moves and can be manipulated into different shapes and has a memory. It can also be shaped into encouraged into new forms. I've been looking to the book arts community for refining my work and learning those techniques. This shows one way the piece can be laid out when open. And the smaller part, this is when it's folded down. And when the wonderful, and you can play with these pieces and display them certain different ways. This one I call the Cactus Book. It's a flag book, and I was inspired by the swooping cactus that I photographed when I was out in California. It just seemed to turn around on itself. And so this is, of course, laying flat, and this is the front and back covers and the back spine. I'm also working with cigar boxes. This one includes shaped leaves that were created by drawing underneath the cyanotype, drawing on the paper, then putting the cyanotype on top and exposing it. So there's no camera involved in making the leaves. And the cigar boxes are interesting to work with in much the same way that I did the ceramic triangles. It's being given a form that has endless possibilities to explore. And this one, and there is once again the exploration of interior and exterior and how those answer each other. This one is now in a juried show at the Rhode Island Center for Photographic Arts. And this is a seedling. It's well, I found many ways to describe this technique. Some people call it triangle fold, but it's using both photograms and these parts were photographs. And this will be at the Vermont Center for Photography for a jury show there. It was juried by Dale Rio. Thank you. And I'm also using digital prints for the boxes. And I find that as I work with one medium, if I'm doing digital, then I start to have cyanotype ideas. So I'm going back and forth between them. And it's like a magic trip to find that paper can be folded into curves. This uses images that I made of a belly dancer at a local Greek restaurant. And thank you all. This has been wonderful talking to you. I hope it's been interesting. And I look forward to if there's any questions or comments.
Thank you, Sally.
Back.
I'll get my video back on too. There we go. Thanks. That was great. It was really interesting to see things kind of come full circle
Mm-hmm.
and like the different elements of your work doing that, coming full circle. I
Yeah.
like that.
And I also have here, these are some mugs that I made in the
Nice.
On the road series. Yeah.
That's great. Had you already been cognizant of Kerouac
I
and
think
the
that I read
connection with,
about that time. Yeah.
yeah, because that's interesting that you wound up in Lowell.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess if anybody has questions, I see that we already have a hand raised, which is great. You can either type your questions into the chat or you can use the raise hand function. Then I can let you turn your mic on, which I'm going to do with Barbara right now. You should be able to talk now, Barbara.
Hi, Barbara.
Hello. So I was curious if you can explain the process of making your books and how long it takes to make the book.
Oh, well, I can show you a few things. I mean, it takes me a long time to make a book because I'll make I'll be playing with folding like this and exploring. And then, I'll have, so essentially I make a mock-up of a book or a box. And then, so that takes a while, usually, about a week of failure, things not working and then getting to work. And then I come up with imagery for it. Sometimes I have an imagery in mind and I'll be, then it takes, well, if it's a cyanotype idea, then I have to print the cyanotype. And if it's a digital idea, it's a lot quicker to print. But so essentially start to finish, they take about 2 weeks. I mean, there's the little ones, and I don't have one here, unfortunately, but there's some small ones that I've been doing that I have doing more repeat, and I can do once I've figured it out, and there's always that process, I can do a few in a day.
Okay, so I was just looking at the website and looking at your lilacs one. How long did that take? Was that not as lengthy because it's not a cyanotype?
The lilacs was a cyanotype.
Was? Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, some of them, I think that's one of the hanging ones, right? The kind of long one.
I think so, yeah.
A book. Yeah, I don't know what you're looking at exactly. So, I mean, there are some that expand, and I used sort of pieces that didn't work in the series. And so, but they were good pieces. So I kind of repurposed them and cut them up and folded them. So that happened too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sally, sorry, I want to jump in with a quick question that's related to what Barbara's talking about or asking about. When you make one of your books that's a cyanotype, are you cyanotyping the entire page or sheet, or are you using a blank sheet and then adhering pieces of cyanotype to the different pages?
Well, like say the cactus book, if you think like that was a cyanotype that I cut up. I, printed those out and then cut them up. The cyanotype. No, there's nothing. No, I can't say I'm pasting things up. And that, I mean, there is a lot of gluing, but
But it's really just coming from one cyanotype piece that you're then folding into the book shape.
Yeah. Oh, sometimes, I mean, it depends on the piece. Sometimes I'll need to make a couple of them. Like, you know, that, here, if I can share again, if we go back to this. Oh, okay, go back. Oh, that one. I mean, like this, I made like 2 sheets with all these leaves on it. And I thought, oh, I'll have leaves for a bunch of pieces. And then as I'm working on this, they're all in here. And at the end, I counted them up. I've got like 80 leaves on this
Oh, wow.
piece.
Wow.
So it kind of, so I don't have any left over, you know, so it just kind of surprised me. Yeah.
And you gave
So
me a
that
link.
is, you know, gluing the, you know, the pieces on, you know, there's that. I'm not sure exactly what else you might, you know, like this.
And then you shared a link with me on your website that I could put in the chat, and that shows your process. Right? Is that specific to the Mythic Garden series or
I think that's specific
or
to
Mythic
Mythic
Nature?
Nature. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'll put that in the chat for everybody.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody have any other questions? Again, you could put it in the chat or you can use the raise hand function. Also, we get a transcript of the chat. So if there's anything you want to share with Sally, it doesn't have to be a question. It could be a comment or something that you'd like her to see after the fact. I'll save the transcript and share it with her afterwards. So feel free to put stuff like that in there too, that things that aren't necessarily questions. And I see that Barbara has her hand up, so I'm gonna,
Oh, Barbara Peterson.
there you go. You should be able to talk now, Barbara.
Hi, Sally.
Hey, Barbara, how are you doing?
Good. Hey, I love this presentation. It was,
Great.
I've known Sally for a very long time, so it was wonderful to see the history, especially the ceramics when I didn't know you, and to see how you've worked it all together and how much you've studied and learned and focused on this. And so many of the pieces were absolutely beautiful.
Oh,
And
thank
I'm
you.
glad I listened to this, and I thought the presentation was fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Barbara. All right. Anybody else? Any questions, comments? Questions for Sally, comments that you'd like her to see after the fact that I could save in the chat? Oh my God, everybody has questions. Helen. All right, Helen, you should be able to use your mic now.
Okay, can you hear me, Sally?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hi, Helen.
Hey,
How you
hey.
doing?
Oh, good. We enjoy your 2 pictures that we had gotten from you. They're just wonderful. I wanted to ask you, let's just use as an example, the Mythic Garden series. And the first one that I bought from you was the angel. I call him the Archangel Gabriel, even though he's not. But anyway, I wanted to know.
You know the angels better than I do.
Right. So I wanted to know, do you do reprints? Like, say another person loved that picture as much as I do. So do you do another original, or do you take a reprint? What do you do to make copies, I
Well,
guess?
there are, I make variations of those. At the time when I make them, I make like 3 to 5 versions of it. With the process, the handmade process, it doesn't come out exactly the same. But like, you know, like these pieces
Yes.
behind me,
Yes.
all of those are also in the show at the Halide Project right now. But, you know, so they're limited editions. Like, you know, as I say, 3 to 5. At the time when I make them, I make extras. Some of them don't come out. And so that's why the variation size, the edition size varies. But
That's- I see. And they're all original in a sense because there's something different about each one, even though they may look the same.
yeah, and especially the ones that I'm doing hand drawing on, there's no way I'm gonna
Exactly.
copy that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Sally. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Helen. Thanks, Helen, for being a good customer, being a collector.
I love your work.
Thanks, Helen.
You are welcome.
All right, so if there's anybody else who has questions or comments, put them in the chat, raise your hand. Eva is saying that she likes to see it all together and in sequence, including the time that you spent not making art, which can be
Mhm.
important. All right. Last call for comments, questions. Oh. Okay, so Judy echoes what Barbara said, enjoying seeing your whole process over the years, how you've changed and your artworks have morphed, and how they intersect.
Mhm.
She has to go now. Bye, Judy.
Okay, great.
All right, anybody else? All right, well, thanks everyone for coming. Again, if you're in the Philadelphia area, please stop by the Halide Project, make an appointment to see the show through our website. If you can't make it to Philly and you're in or near Massachusetts, go to the Concord Library next Friday, I believe is the opening, or Saturday.
Next Wednesday, it will be open. Yeah.
Ah,
And we
okay.
have opening reception on Saturday, the 6th.
And if anyone is in Vermont
Oh,
on
yeah.
Friday the 5th, you can see one of Sally's pieces in the show at the Vermont Center for Photography that I guest juried,
Yeah.
along with a lot of other work.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. We hope to make it up there.
Ah,
It's a fun show, a fun area.
yeah, it's great. I can't wait to see you in person. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. You're
Thank you.
welcome, Catherine. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. And thank you very much, Sally.
Okay. Bye.
right.
Thank
Good
you.
night.